It usually happens in a nondescript office building in a quiet industrial park, far away from the prying eyes of the downtown core. Or, increasingly, it happens over a Zoom call with the camera turned off, the connection crackling with the silence of shame. The person sitting across from the desk, or staring blankly at the screen, is not who you would expect to see in a debt crisis meeting. He is wearing a suit that costs $2,000. He drives a leased BMW X5 that is parked outside, gleaming in the sun. He is a partner at a mid-sized law firm or a senior software engineer at a tech giant, or a specialized surgeon with a decade of experience. On paper, he earns $350,000 a year. On Instagram, his life is a curated montage of Muskoka cottage weekends, business class flights to Europe, and private school tuitions for his 2 children. But right now, his hands are shaking. He is sliding a stack of papers across the desk to a licensed insolvency trustee. The papers tell a story that contradicts the suit and the car. They show a variable rate mortgage that has renewed at double the monthly payment. They show a home equity line of credit that is maxed out at $200,000, frozen by the bank. They show 3 platinum credit cards with balances that haven't been paid off in 6 months. And they show a tax bill from the Canada Revenue Agency that he has been ignoring for 2 years. He looks at the trustee, his voice barely a whisper, and asks the question that used to be unthinkable for someone in his tax bracket. Is there any way I can avoid bankruptcy? Can I save my license? Well, can I save my reputation? The trustee looks at the numbers, the cold, hard arithmetic of a lifestyle built on cheap leverage, and shakes his head. You are insolvent, he says. In fact, you have been insolvent for a year. You just didn't admit it. Welcome back to Canada Property Watch. We have chronicled the white-collar layoffs that are sweeping the banking and tech sectors. We have exposed the fire sales of luxury homes in the most prestigious neighborhoods. We have warned you about the banks denying mortgage renewals to loyal customers. Today, we are documenting the final, brutal destination of this economic collapse. We are talking about the high-income insolvency wave. For decades, we believed that bankruptcy was a tragedy reserved for the poor, for the unlucky, for those who lost their jobs or suffered a catastrophic illness. But in 2026, the face of insolvency has changed. It is the face of the Canadian millionaire next door. It is the face of the top 10% of income earners who leveraged themselves to the hilt during the cheap money era and are now being crushed by the weight of their own lifestyle. In this deep dive investigation, we are going to explain why earning $300,000 a year is no longer a shield against financial ruin. We will expose the consumer proposal explosion, the secret legal mechanism high earners are using to wipe out debt without technically going bankrupt. We will discuss the surplus income trap that makes bankruptcy a financial suicide for the rich, and we will explain why the collapse of the high earner consumer is the final signal that the Canadian economy is entering a structural depression. And they kept up with the Joneses. But now, the Joneses are filing for insolvency. To understand how a rich person goes broke, you have to understand the fundamental confusion between income and wealth. In Canada, from 2010 to 2022, we confused the two concepts. We looked at people with high incomes, doctors, dentists, tech directors, real estate brokers, and assumed they were wealthy. But wealth is what you own minus what you owe. Income is just cash flow. And for the Canadian high earner, that cash flow was already spoken for before it even hit the bank account. Let's dissect the anatomy of a broke millionaire. Let's call him Henry. H.E.N.R.Y. stands for high earner, not rich yet. Henry makes $25,000 a month. That sounds like a fortune to the average Canadian family struggling with grocery bills. But let's look at Henry's outflows in the year 2026. Taxes take $10,000 immediately. He is left with $15,000. His mortgage on the $2.5 million home in Oakville just renewed. It went from $6,000 to $11,000 a month. He is left with $4,000. He has 2 luxury car leases, a Range Rover for himself and a Porsche Macan for his wife, costing $2,500 a month. He is left with $1,500. Private school tuition for 2 kids is $3,000 a month. He is now negative $1,500. And we haven't even paid for groceries, utilities, insurance, property taxes, or the annual vacation to Tulum. So how did Henry survive the last 3 years of inflation? He used debt. Specifically, and he used his HELOC, the home equity line of credit. When the house was skyrocketing in value, the bank kept increasing his limit. Every 6 months, he got a letter. Congratulations, Henry. You have another $50,000 available. Henry treated his house like an ATM. He used the equity to pay the grocery bill. He used the equity to pay the Visa bill. He used the equity to pay the tax installments. He was subsidizing a $30,000 a month lifestyle on a $15,000 a month net income, bridging the gap with borrowed money against an inflated asset. But then, three things happened at once. The perfect storm arrived. First, rates rose. The interest on that $300,000 HELOC balance went from 2.95% to 7.7%. Suddenly, the free money cost $2,000 a month in interest alone. Second, and values fell. The house dropped in value by 20%. The bank froze the HELOC. The ATM stopped dispensing cash. Third, the CRA came knocking. During the pandemic, the Canada Revenue Agency was lenient. Now, they are aggressive. They want their money, and Henry hasn't paid his installments. Suddenly, the cash flow isn't just negative, it is catastrophic. Henry is bleeding $5,000 to $8,000 a month. He burns through his savings in 6 months. He starts missing credit card payments. Then he misses a mortgage payment. Then he receives the letter we discussed in the last video. Renewal denied. Pay in full. This is the moment of truth. The house is sold under power of sale. But here's the kicker. The shortfall. Because Henry borrowed against the equity, he owes more than the house is worth. And the house sells for $2 million. Mortgage plus HELOC plus penalty equals $2.2 million. Henry has lost his home, and he still owes the bank $200,000, plus $50,000 on credit cards, plus $100,000 to the CRA. He has $350,000 in unsecured debt. He has no assets, and despite his high income, he cannot service that debt. He is insolvent. So, what does he do? He goes to a licensed insolvency trustee. And this is where the story gets technical and fascinating. Most people think bankruptcy is the only option, but for high earners, bankruptcy is a trap. Why? Because of surplus income. In Canada, bankruptcy laws are designed to be punitive for high earners. The government sets a threshold for how much money you need to live, a standard of living allowance. If you earn more than that threshold, you have to pay 50% of your surplus into the bankruptcy estate for 21 months. For someone earning $300,000, the surplus income payments would be thousands of dollars a month. It is incredibly expensive to go bankrupt if you have a high income. Furthermore, bankruptcy destroys your professional standing. If you are a lawyer, you might be disbarred or suspended. If you are an accountant, you lose your CPA designation. If you are a stockbroker, you lose your license. If you are a director of a corporation, you must resign. So Henry doesn't choose bankruptcy. He chooses the consumer proposal. This is the buzzword you are going to hear everywhere in 2026. A consumer proposal is a legally binding deal with your creditors. You say about, look, and I owe you $350,000. If I go bankrupt, you get nothing because I have no assets, and high surplus income penalties will just make me quit my job. But I have a high income. So, let's make a deal. I will pay you $100,000 over 5 years. You write off the other $250,000. Deal? Creditors, usually the banks, say yes. Why? Because 30 cents on the dollar is better than 0 cents. For Henry, this is a lifeline. He keeps his professional license. He avoids the stigma of the B word. He stops the interest clock immediately. He gets to keep his leased car, usually as long as he keeps making the payments. He creates a structured payment plan. This sounds like a get out of jail free card, but it isn't. It is a get out of jail broke card. The consumer proposal stays on your credit report for usually 3 years after you finish paying it off. That means for the next 7 to 8 years, Henry is a financial pariah. He cannot get a credit card. He cannot get a mortgage. He cannot lease a new car. He has to live on cash. Debit card only. Imagine the psychological toll on someone who defined their self-worth by their credit limit. Henry goes from being a premium banking client with a dedicated advisor to being rejected for a $50 cell phone plan. He has to explain to his wife why they can't finance the kitchen renovation. He has to tell his kids why they are moving from the 3,000 square foot home to a rental townhouse. This is the silent depression. It is silent because high earners do not talk about it. They hide it. And they maintain the facade as long as possible. They lease the BMW until the day the repo man comes. They wear the Rolex until they pawn it to pay the trustee fees. We are seeing a massive spike in consumer proposals in the $150,000 plus income bracket. The Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy, OSB, data confirms this. The fastest growing demographic for insolvency is not the poor, it is the upper middle class. Why is this happening now? Because the lag effect is over. It takes about 18 to 24 months for interest rate hikes to break a high earner. They have more buffers, they have more savings, they have more credit lines. It takes time to burn through that liquidity. The Bank of Canada started hiking in 2022. We are now in 2026. The buffers are gone. And the fuse has burned down to the powder keg. Let's talk about the specific triggers that are pushing these millionaires over the edge. Trigger number 1 is the tax debt trap. This is the dirty secret of the self-employed professional. Real estate agents, doctors, consultants, they are often incorporated. They receive their income gross, and they are supposed to set aside tax. But during the inflation crisis, when the mortgage payment doubled, they dipped into the tax money. They spent the HST they collected. They spent the corporate tax. They thought, I'll catch up next year. But next year was worse. Now, the CRA is auditing. The CRA has incredible powers. They can freeze your bank account without a court order. They can garnish 100% of your wages. They can seize your accounts receivable. When the CRA freezes a doctor's bank account, the game is over instantly. They can't pay staff. They can't pay rent. They file for insolvency immediately to lift the freeze. Trigger number 2 is the private lending death spiral. When the big banks cut Henry off, as we discussed in our Renewal Denied video, he didn't just sell the house immediately, he tried to save it. He went to a private lender. He took a second mortgage at 15%. He took a private personal loan at 20%. He thought, rates will come down soon, I just need to bridge the gap. But rates didn't come down fast enough, and house prices didn't recover. The high interest debt compounded exponentially. In 12 months, a $100,000 private loan turns into $120,000. He dug the hole deeper. Well, by the time he files for insolvency, the debt load is astronomical. Trigger number 3 is divorce. Financial stress is the number 1 cause of divorce. When the money runs out, the fighting starts. Divorce destroys wealth. You take one household and split it into 2. You double the overhead expenses. You add legal fees. For a couple that is already teetering on the edge of insolvency, a divorce filing is the final push. We are seeing a wave of gray divorces and financial divorces where the assets are sold, the debts are split, and both parties end up in a consumer proposal. What happens to the economy when the rich go broke? This is the macro nightmare. The top 20% of income earners drive a disproportionate amount of consumer spending. They are the ones buying the new cars. They are the ones eating at the steakhouses. They are the ones renovating kitchens. They are the ones traveling. When Henry files a consumer proposal, his spending drops to 0. He enters austerity mode. He stops buying. He stops renovating. He pulls his kids out of private school. He cancels the club membership. Multiply Henry by 200,000 people. That is billions of dollars sucked out of the service economy. This is why we are seeing high-end restaurants closing in Toronto and Vancouver. This is why the luxury car lots are full of unsold inventory. This is why the renovation contractors have no work. The wealth effect has reversed. It is now the poverty effect. When people feel poor, they stop spending. When they are actually poor, insolvent, they cannot spend. And this leads to a deflationary spiral in the discretionary sector. If you run a business that targets the upper middle class, you are in the danger zone. Your customer base is evaporating. The trickle-down effect is brutal. When Henry stops renovating his kitchen, the contractor loses a job. The contractor fires his laborer. The laborer can't pay his rent. The landlord defaults on the mortgage. It is a contagion that starts at the top and crashes to the bottom. There is also a societal shift happening. The stigma of failure is fading, simply because there are so many people failing. In the past, going bankrupt was a mark of shame that you hid forever. Now, at dinner parties, the few that are still happening, people are whispering about their trustees. I heard Jason filed a proposal. Yeah, my brother did too. and it saved his practice. Insolvency is becoming a financial strategy, a tool to reset the board. But we must remember, it is not a victimless crime. When Henry writes off $250,000 in debt, who pays for it? The bank pays. And when the bank takes losses, they raise fees, they widen spreads, and they tighten credit for everyone else. We all pay for Henry's leverage. We are also seeing a massive transfer of assets. As these high earners liquidate their assets to pay their proposals or avoid bankruptcy, who is buying? Cash buyers, corporations, foreign money. The distressed inventory we talked about in previous videos is being scooped up by people who didn't play the leverage game. This is the greatest transfer of wealth in a generation. Assets are moving from the leveraged middle class to the cash-rich elite. And Henry is losing his home so that a private equity firm can turn it into a rental. Let's talk about the 7-year winter. If you file a consumer proposal, you are looking at a 7-year exile from the credit system, 3 to 5 years to pay it off. 3 years of it staying on your record after payment. That is a long time. That is 7 years where you cannot buy a home. You become a permanent renter class. This creates a permanent demand for rental housing. Former homeowners are flooding the rental market. They are competing with immigrants and students. This drives rents up even as house prices fall. It is a paradox. Asset deflation, house prices down, but cost of living inflation, rents up. Henry goes from paying a $6,000 mortgage to paying $5,000 in rent. He hasn't saved much, but he has lost the asset. Oh, he is running on a treadmill that is going nowhere. And let's not forget the mental health crisis. The suicide rate among men facing financial ruin is a terrifying statistic. We are seeing a rise in mental health claims, disability claims, and substance abuse issues among the white-collar demographic. The stress of hiding the truth, the shame of the Tuesday letter, the humiliation of the trustee meeting, it breaks people. If you are watching this and you are in this situation, know that you are not alone. There are thousands of people in the same boat. The shame is the weapon the banks use to keep you quiet. Don't let it work. We need to add a specific footnote about the real estate industry itself. During the boom years of 2020 to 2022, there were 70,000 real estate agents in Toronto alone. They were making huge commissions. And many of them bought pre-construction condos. They bought investment properties. They leased G-Wagons. They didn't pay their taxes. Now, transaction volume is down 50%. Their income has dropped to near zero, but they are holding 3 or 4 mortgages. They are the ground zero of this insolvency wave. We are seeing entire brokerages where 30 to 40% of the agents are insolvent. They are trying to sell their own homes, but they can't get the price they need. They are the captains going down with the ship they helped build. Watch for a massive consolidation in the real estate industry. The part-time agent is gone. The leveraged agent is bankrupt. Only the veterans with cash reserves will survive. We must also touch on the fraud element. We must discuss Brampton mortgages and document fraud. During the boom, and many high earners and fake high earners used fraudulent documents to get mortgages. They inflated their incomes. They forged T4s. Now that they are filing for insolvency, the trustees are looking closely at the files. If a trustee discovers that you used fraud to get the debt, that debt cannot be discharged. You cannot bankrupt your way out of fraud. We are going to see a wave of legal cases where the banks challenge the bankruptcy discharges. They will say, "You lied on the application. You are stuck with this debt forever." This is the nightmare scenario. Insolvency without relief. If you lied on your application, the consumer proposal might not save you. You are truly trapped. So, what is the lesson here? The lesson is that income is not security. Well, you can make $500,000 a year and be broke if you spend $501,000. We built a culture that celebrated cash flow and ignored net worth. We celebrated leverage and mocked savings. We called people who paid off their mortgages financially illiterate because they weren't arbitraging the spread. Well, the spread has reversed. The savers are the survivors. The leverage kings are the casualties. If you are a high earner and you are watching this and you are feeling the walls close in, here is the hard advice. Stop digging. Do not take the private loan to pay the visa. Do not liquidate your RRSP to pay the mortgage. RRSPs are usually protected in bankruptcy and insolvency. Don't waste them on a sinking ship. Consult a trustee before you lose everything. Sometimes Tom, a strategic insolvency is the only way to save your future. It is a bitter pill. It means losing the image. It means trading the Porsche for a Honda. But it is better than the alternative, which is losing your mind and your future to a debt that can never be repaid. The millionaire next door is moving out, the house is empty, the car is repossessed, and the credit report is flagged R9. This is the end of the Gilded Age of Canadian real estate. The facade has crumbled, the gold paint has peeled off, and underneath it is just rusted iron and unpaid bills. We are entering the era of the great deleveraging. It will be painful, it will be ugly, but it is the necessary correction for 20 years of excess. The Renewal Denied letter was the warning shot. The consumer proposal is the surrender treaty. Subscribe to Canada Property Watch. Well, we will continue to track the collapse, from the bank towers to the bankruptcy courts. We will tell you the truth about what is happening to your neighbors and how to protect yourself from the fallout. Cash is king. Debt is death. Stay liquid.